Hey guys, Zom Fox here, and today we're going to be talking about how the Cincinnati Bengals have signed two Houston gamblers in Dominique Davis and Tegray Scales. Dominique Davis is a defensive tackle, and Tegray Scales is an inside linebacker. Both these guys just got signed to the Bengals, so without further ado, let's look at what they did in their past careers. As for Tegray Scales, it's pretty weird. Despite having a much more, beneficial past, as he was a member of training squads for a bunch of teams, he was on rosters a little bit for a few games and stuff like that in the Steelers, the Renegades, and the XFL, the Steelers again. But overall, he only played in 5 games, and he was mainly just a special teamer. As of last year, he was mainly just a special teamer. I mean, that's pretty much all he did. Dominique Davis, however, was something pretty spectacular. Despite being a defensive tackle, he actually ended up getting 15th in the entire league at tackles at 57. He played all 10 games. He had 3.5 sacks with 3 TFLs. He was overall a very solid pass rusher who even had a pass defense. He was picked in the 26th round of the USFL draft. And now we got to look at the actual depth chart. And as you can see in the depth chart, I'm just going to put all 3 linebackers just because I can. But they run a base 4-3 defense. So they're going to be having 4 guys on the line and then 3 linebackers. So weak side, middle, and strong. As for the depth chart, as you can see, Tegray Scales is already ahead of Carson Wells and Clarence Hicks. But as for the rest of them, in front of Tegray Scales, at where they have him at strong linebacker, Akeem Davis-Gaither and Keandre Jones. Middle linebackers, there's Jermaine Pratt and Marcus Bailey. Then weak side, there's Logan Wilson, Joe Bachie, and then Clay Johnston on the same side as him. As for Dominique Davis, there's only 4 defensive tackles ahead of him on the roster, because there's literally only 4 other ones. The starters DJ Reader and BJ Hill, then Tyler Shelvin and Josh Tupa. So let's start with Tegray Scales. So first of all, the 2 guys who are behind him are both undrafted free agent rookies. So it kind of makes sense why he's above them already. But now we get to the other guys. These are the 4 guys who are either on the same as him at third string or ahead of him. As you can look at them, and you'll notice with most of the Bengals guys, these guys are all pretty young. They've only been in the league a couple years. Like, literally all these guys have been in the league for like 2 years. 2 of them were 7th round picks back in 2020. And then you have 2 guys who are undrafted free agents who are heading into a 3rd season. As for Keandre Jones, he hasn't started a single game. He's only appeared in a couple. He has a few tackles. That's pretty much it. Marcus Bailey, he's actually started a couple games, but he's mainly just been in games, special team type of thing, or just, not playing, things like that. But last year when he started 3 games, he actually did have half a sack, and he had 38 combined tackles. Joe Bachie had 30 combined tackles last year, was starting 2 games. And then Clay Johnston, he was a member of the Panthers. I didn't even remember him. I didn't even know who he was, so he wasn't really SR Panther. He literally was a non-impact special teamer pretty much. But as for Cincinnati last year, in the 7 games he was there, he did actually have 8 solo tackles and 17 total. Now, as for the starters, once again, are all insanely young. Like, literally, this team just has a 2020 thing going on, aside from, one guy. But these guys are all pretty solid. Logan Wilson, I think, is overall the best of these 3. This is that one guy where, I feel like a lot of people know Logan Wilson. I've heard of him before. He ended up getting 100 tackles last year, despite only playing in 13 games, which is very impressive, as he did deal with some injuries. But he did have 4 interceptions as well, which is pretty respectable, and had a sack. And considering the fact that aside from sacks, pretty much every stat did go up for the most part, is a very good sign for him. Akeem Davis-Gaither, he was a 4th round pick back in 2020. He actually started and played in less games last year than he did in 2020, yet his stats were almost identical in tackles regards and turnover-wise, as instead of 1 interception, he had 1 forced fumble. He didn't have that sack, but he was almost there on tackles. So he played better, but he wasn't, as often on the field. Then Jermaine Pratt has pretty much played every single linebacker position on this team. He's the longest tenured of all these guys, which I think is hilarious, at 2019. He's pretty much been a starter for the whole time he's been here, 3rd round pick. He's literally been the starter in almost every single game he's played in. There being his rookie year, he didn't play every game, and then last year, or in 2020, he didn't start 1 game. Overall, he's also been a very solid guy. He gets tackles. He's the other member of this team that you probably might have heard of. He's had over 70 tackles all 3 of his seasons, and he's, more importantly, had over 50 solo tackles, which is really solid. Now, As for defensive tackle wise, all four of them are here. The two starters on the left, the two second stringers on the right. Tyler Shelvin, he was on the team last year's 4th-round pick. He played in a couple games, got a couple tackles, didn't really do much. Josh Tupa, on the other hand, he's been with his team as undrafted free agent for heading into his 5th year now. And he actually did start a good amount of games the last couple of years. He's got, 27 and 12 tackles respectively with a QB hit there. He's kind of just been, one of those guys who's been there. Then you go into the starters. B.J. Hill was a 3rd-round pick from the Giants back in 2018. And with his 1 year in Cincinnati, he started 2 games, played in 16, but was really more of a guy who kept on coming in for guys, as he ended up having 5.5 sacks, which matched his career high of 2018, his rookie year, when he started 12 games. His 50 tackles combined were a career high. His 29 tackles were only below his 2018 season for solo tackles. But he did have 12 QB hits, which was better than he had in 2018. And his tackle for loss were tied. So despite not technically being a starter, he played when he played in coming in rotation and was solid enough to match pretty much all of his career highs, which are from a year where he started 12 games, which is very solid. And for the Bengals' sake, is a really good thing, things to come. DJ Reader, he was a 5th-round pick from Houston, and he's pretty much been a starter whenever he's healthy, aside from his rookie year. As, back in 2020, he only played 5 games. But as for last year, he had 2 sacks, he had 43 combined tackles with 7 QB hits. And overall, in terms of his stats, the only thing you might say isn't the best is his stats haven't really improved all that much over his career. They've been pretty much equal, literally every year. But when you look at his stats, they show a solid defensive tackle. Maybe not a star defensive tackle, but, decent, good enough. So, as for them on the depth chart, I think the most important thing to note is that Dominique Davis is a real shot at getting a lot of playing time. I think that he has overtaken Christian Sam, let me rephrase it, as being the player with probably the best chance to play significant snaps on a team. When you have 4 guys ahead of you in a position where there's 2 groups, especially in a defensive line where it's a lot about rotational guys coming in, he definitely has a real shot at playing. And as he checked, he could definitely overtake Shelvin and Tupo, so he could become a legit second stringer on there. So I feel like he's going to almost guarantee getting a lot of playing time as long as he makes final roster cuts. Tegray Scales has already headed 2 undrafted free agents, and I think he could definitely get ahead of a couple other guys. I don't see him being a starter, but I do think he can get ahead of some of these guys. So I do actually think that both these guys have realistic shots of playing, though I think Dominique Davis has an insanely good chance of playing. But I guess we'll see. This has been Zom Fox. If you enjoy this content and want me notified as soon as I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And as always, have a great night.